Hello and welcome. I'm Asuma Katauka and you are watching World Report on NewsX World. Let's take a look at some of the top headlines. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky has said that Russian President Putin wants full control over Donetsk and Luhansk regions. To demonstrate his victory in the war, Zelensky added that Putin's goal is to show his dominance in Ukraine. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky has said that Kyiv is ready to supply drones to the US if Washington provides missiles to Ukraine. Zelensky added that a contract for 25 Patriot systems is currently in preparation. Gaza Civil Defense reports at least 45 killed in Israeli strikes yesterday, as the Israeli army resumes enforcement of the Gaza ceasefire while reporting 2 soldiers killed in southern Gaza. U.S. advisor Jared Kushner has said that Israel must improve Palestinian lives to integrate into the Middle East. He stressed that the need for joint security and economic opportunity for both sides to live together durably. UNICEF's Peter Hawking is among 20 UN employees detained by Houthi rebels in Sana'a. The Houthi group holds 15 international workers, including those from WFP and UNICEF, amid increasing operations against international agencies in rebel-held areas. U.S. President Donald Trump has said that he does not want China to play the rare earth game with the U.S. He also believes China will reach a deal on soybeans and wants China to purchase at least as much as before. Thieves have executed a 4-minute heist at Paris Louvre Museum, stealing 8 priceless jewels from the French crown collection. President Macron has condemned the theft, pledging to recover the stolen works. Centrist Rodrigo Paz wins Bolivia's presidential runoff with 54.5% of vote, defeating conservative Jorge Tuto Quiroga. Paz's victory marks a historic shift away from nearly 2 decades of leftist rule, taking office on November 8th. Now we start from Ukraine and Russia. As the war between Russia and Ukraine escalates, the Russian Foreign Ministry has called for fundamental resolution to the situation. The Foreign Ministry has stated that a resolution must guarantee peace and that the effort must look to secure a long-standing agreement, unlike previous efforts. This comes as Ukraine and Russia strike and disable each other's energy depots as well as resources. Amid all this, Ukrainian President Zelensky has now said that Washington's hesitation to provide Ukraine with Tomahawk missiles may be because Trump wants to avoid escalating this issue with Russia before meeting Putin face-to-face on the subject of this meeting. Zelensky has also shed doubt on Budapest being the best location for such a meeting and has affirmed his willingness to attend a trilateral meeting with Trump and Putin if invited. Now for this discussion, we are joined by Glenn Grant. He's an ex-advisor to Defense Minister of Ukraine, joins us live from Riga. Thank you, Glenn, for joining us again. Good to see you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Now, looking at this news, what do you think, what would a fundamental resolution to this war look like? And what do you think it would mean for Ukraine?
Well, let's be quite clear. We're in a mess at the moment. And one of the things that is quite clear is that a lot of people are taking what they see on the surface as being the reality, like the comments from the Russian Foreign Ministry, that nothing has changed. Russia wants to destroy Ukraine and take power over Ukraine. That is a fundamental, and they're not going to change that. And they've made that clear. What they think at the moment is that Putin, having been hard on Zelensky, that there might be some opening for weakness on Zelensky's side, but there isn't. In fact, if anything, the failure to give Tomahawk missiles to Ukraine from America is actually making the Ukrainians more stubborn about defending their territory and staying on the course. So there's not going to be a peace agreement. There's not going to be a nice line unless actually Russia withdraws from the territories that it's taken. So anybody who thinks or hopes otherwise, I think is just, is dreaming.
Right. And how do you think it should differ, if it were to happen, how do you think it should differ from previous peace efforts that have failed?
Well, they've all failed for the same fundamental reason, that this is an existential threat to the sovereignty and the existence of Ukraine, which its people cannot possibly agree to. So that, it just can't happen in that way. And I do not see this being any different from anything else, in that Trump thinks that he can bully Zelensky into giving up land for some nebulous peace that is not going to happen, and Putin thinks that Trump knows Trump is helping him in his act of gaining dominance for Ukraine. So it's not going to be any different. It doesn't matter what people think. This war is going to continue until one side breaks. And at the moment, frankly, I think Russia is closer to that than Ukraine.
Thank you for sharing that. And also, Glenn, we saw that, yesterday there were some speculations about Russia asking Ukraine to give up this particular area called Donetsk. And if I recall correctly, it was Luhansk as well. Can you tell us the strategic value of these locations to Ukraine and also to Russia? Why did Russia specifically talk about these regions?
I think that let's start with the Russia bit. I think that they talk about those regions because they want them because they're rich. You've got huge amounts of historic factories, minerals, and sort of energy resources in those areas, and that's why Russia wants them. And geopolitically, if they take those two areas, then they are getting a lot closer to the rear of Kharkiv and the rear of Sumy in the north, and very, very close to Dnieper, which of course is one of the major cities, the powerhouses of Ukraine. Down south, if they get Zaporizhzhia, they've already got the nuclear facilities there. So there's not much else they can get in that direction. So they'd be willing to give up a little, but it's not going to happen. That's the main thing that people need to get in their mind. Nobody is going to give up Donetsk and Luhansk for the simple reason that too much blood has been shed. And it's going to continue as it is at the moment.
Right. And lastly, Glenn, if Trump and Putin and this trilateral summit between Trump, Putin, and Zelensky were to happen, which location do you think has a potential of holding this?
Well, Budapest is a cynical location because of the Budapest memorandum that Putin trashed completely when he invaded. So it's very cynical. It's almost it's a power game, suggesting it should go to Budapest. And Trump is too stupid to understand what he's actually said by accepting that as a place. Also, Putin would find it very difficult to get there because he's got to fly over NATO countries to get there. And I'm not sure those NATO countries will accept a flight from Russia. So if they want a three-way, it's got to be somewhere that Putin can get to where he considers safely, where he's not at risk. And frankly, there are not many places like that. Maybe somewhere in Turkey.
Yes.
But Alaska again, perhaps, because they've done it there once already. But this is going to be challenging, and I notice the Russians are already saying this is quite difficult for them.
Right. Thank you for sharing that, Glenn. Please stay with us as we stay on this topic now. Lithuania's Foreign Minister Kęstutis Budryis has slammed the possibility of Trump and Putin meeting in Budapest, saying that there is no place for Russian President Vladimir Putin in any European capital. Budryis added that the only place for Putin in Europe is in The Hague, in front of the criminal tribunal, referring to the arrest warrant issued for the Russian president by the International Criminal Court in the Dutch city. The comments were made ahead of a meeting of European foreign ministers in Luxembourg. Now for this discussion, we go back to Glenn Grant. He's an ex-advisor to Defense Minister of Ukraine, joining us live from Riga. Thank you, Glenn, for staying with us.
Yeah, thanks.
Thank you. As we were just talking about which city, it does look like even Lithuanian Foreign Minister has shown critic of this choice of location. And so what are the implications of holding potential trilateral meeting with Trump, Zelensky and Putin? And also, do you think that it could happen, if it were to happen in Alaska again, do you think Zelensky should be, of course he should be invited, but do you think they will invite Zelensky this time?
It's a very good question. But to be frank, any meeting between Trump and Putin is going to be a love fest, whatever happens. And there can be no peace without Zelensky at the table. So it's got to be a three-way meeting. But I do not see Putin wanting to face up to Zelensky at the moment, because Putin has got nothing to offer. And he knows that. He knows that what he wants is submission from Zelensky, and he knows that Zelensky will not submit. So actually, Zelensky saying that he wants to be there is a direct threat to the credibility of Putin, because if it goes on television and the Russians all see that Putin is actually not strong enough to actually talk down Zelensky, even with Trump behind him, he's going to lose face. So if Zelensky says he's coming, my guess is that Trump is going to find a good reason for staying away.
And what do you think this Lithuania's remarks, and then we've seen some, like Hungary, say something else. So should Europe maintain a unified stance on isolating Putin, or do you think there is value in allowing dialogue under certain conditions?
No. Let's be clear. If this happens in a European country, then Europe has lost face badly. And there will be considerable unhappiness amongst those countries that are actually supporting Ukraine directly. For example, Germany. There are some that would say, well, dialogue is more important. But dialogue can only flourish if there is the possibility of it flourishing. And at the moment, that possibility does not exist. Russia is not tired enough yet to want to make concessions, and Zelensky cannot make concessions. So it will be just going round the houses again for the same sort of things that we've had before, actually time wasting and energy wasting. So I think that the majority of Europeans know that, European countries know this, and what the foreign minister of Lithuania is saying actually reflects the majority view in Europe.
Right. Thank you very much, Glenn, for sharing that insight throughout this topic. Thank you very much. Now we move on to our next news. Rodrigo Paz, a centrist senator, has won Bolivia's presidential election according to preliminary results, capturing the vote of those angry over the country's economic crisis and disillusioned after 20 years of rule by the Movement Towards Socialism, MAS party. Let's in fact listen into what Paz has said.
Ahora, después de estar con ustedes, tendremos un otro número de presidentes. Bolivia vuelve a recuperar paso a paso su escenario internacional. Bien, señores, hay que abrir el Bolivia al mundo, retomar un rol, y por eso también quiero agradecer al secretario de Estado adjunto, al señor Landau, que a nombre del gobierno del presidente Trump nos ha llamado para aquello que en su momento, y lo dijimos al país, dialogando para todo respaldo, ayuda o cooperación para poder llevar adelante una relación estrecha con uno de los gobiernos más importantes del ámbito mundial, sea parte de las soluciones a partir del 8 de noviembre, que a Bolivia no le falte sus hidrocarburos.
Meanwhile, the defeated Bolivian presidential candidate Jorge Quiroga has said that despite the overwhelming pain, he will respect the election results in a concession speech to his supporters in La Paz. Let's listen into what Jorge Quiroga has said.
Por eso, viendo los resultados del CIEPRE, no fueron anunciados con mucha elegancia y más allá de que había otra información previa que puede causar confusión, respetamos el trabajo del CIEPRE en la primera vuelta y lo vamos a respetar en la segunda vuelta. He llamado a Rodrigo Paz Pereira, le he deseado mis felicitaciones en momentos...
Now we move on to Australia. Australian Prime Minister Anthony Albanese is set to meet US President Donald Trump at the White House to discuss a range of issues, with a major focus on strengthening the Australia relationship in critical minerals and defense. Additionally, Albanese will push for a larger US commitment to Australia's critical minerals sector. As China tightens its control over global rare earth supply, Australia is looking to boost mineral supply chains and even offer shares of its planned strategic reserve to allies, including Britain. Meanwhile, the summit will also cover security issues, including the AUKUS Treaty, under which Australia is set to buy nuclear-powered submarines from the US by 2032. Australian officials are confident that the agreement will move forward, with Defence Minister Richard Marles saying he knows when the review will conclude. Now for this discussion, we're joined by Charles Thompson. He's an Australian journalist, joins us live from Sydney. Thank you very much, Charles, for joining us. Welcome to NewsX World. Charles, how might deepening US-Australia cooperation, especially on critical minerals, reshape global supply chains?
Okay, so this is very complicated, and nobody has anybody but to blame but the Prime Minister himself as Australia. The current ambassador in Australia is a former Prime Minister by the name of Kevin Rudd, who's a very articulate, very bright gentleman, but he's on the record of attacking the Trump administration way beyond what was required. And also, Australia has messed up its policy in Gaza. So it's really, there's so much baggage outside of the rare earth minerals when there's meetings happening with the Trump administration. Now, it's really a hard one to call. It's fabulous that the Americans need us and that they're willing to invest in the rare earth, but also now the problem will also be with China, because China will also be pushing and pulling. And unfortunately, some of our people have not shown the wisdom and dealing with both America and China well.
Yes, and building on that, Charles, given the long-standing alliance, although now, as you've mentioned, there are some sticking points in Australia and the US relationship, but what challenges and opportunities could arise as these two countries navigate this increasing geopolitical tensions, also particularly with China, as you mentioned?
It's really hard to call. Of course, America needs the rare earth minerals. Of course, Australia be willing to assist, but then there are going to have to be some agreements and some strategy and whatever. And I'm just afraid that the current people who are involved, along with the Prime Minister of Australia, are just not up to the mark to deal with the Americans. The Americans will manage it. They'll pull it off. Australia has nowhere to turn. There is no way we can refuse the Americans, and if the Americans need help, we'll give it. But it's just unfortunate that politics has had to come into this when what should have happened was the people in the Australian Embassy in Washington should have been a bit more level-headed.
Right. When you talk about, these sticking points between U.S. and Australia, you've already mentioned Gaza, you've already mentioned some, but what else is there?
Trump is the master of the deal. And Australian politicians who are running the country haven't understood. You do not, if you want to sit down with Trump and do a deal with him, talk behind his back and stab America behind its back. What were they thinking when they recognized Palestine? I mean, they obviously are not competent in what they're doing. And obviously, it's a fantastic opportunity. It's fabulous that the Trump administration is giving time to the Australian Prime Minister, but I'm very doubtful that things will be done completely in the best interest of Australia, simply because the sheer incompetency of our own people.
What about competency of Prime Minister Albanese? How do you think? Do you think he will be able to get a deal, or maybe get closer to understanding President Trump? Or what's your analysis?
No. So you see, Australia has one of the most sophisticated mining systems in the world. Now, I'm not an expert on rare earth minerals, but what I understand that what the Chinese have quietly done is they've improved their technology exponentially above and beyond everybody else in the world with rare earth extraction. So Australia is uniquely placed as a country, if there's wise investment and the right people are put there, to very quickly pick up the pace and develop the techniques, the machinery, and the mechanisms to produce rare earth minerals. So absolutely, I can see the Americans possibly helping Australia very much to get this over the line and get this going forward. Because this is an amazing play by China. This is extraordinary. What China has done has even dumbfounded the Americans. I'm struck by it. I mean, I would never have thought they would have brought this out into the open. Normally the Chinese would do this quietly behind the doors. But to turn around and say that they now are going to control who buys rare earth and they will dictate is just extraordinary.
Yes.
Everything in modern life, at the end of the day, has some sort of chip or some sort of device or some sort of metal that contains rare earth metals. Yes. So it's incredibly important issue, incredibly important. And I'm glad that the Prime Minister is meeting Donald Trump and his team today.
Yes, and bringing AUKUS to this conversation, Charles, what strategic and security implication does this AUKUS submarine agreement have for this upcoming summit between Albanese and Trump?
Australia has a terrible track record in building things itself for its own military. Whether they're ships or submarines, they always go over budget. Now, to build state-of-the-art nuclear submarines in Australia is going to be a huge challenge, and it requires transfer of technology also. So this is something that's very complicated. One can't be sure that Australia will pull this off, even if it gets agreement with the United States. And the problem is that the Chinese now are the ship manufacturing hub of the world. I mean, even in Sydney Harbour, all the ferries now, they're all made in China. China has taken over this. So this is not something that can just be fixed in a few days. It's going to take a couple of years of really hard work. Now, how this treaty goes forward, to be fair though, the Americans have done a terrible job with India. So AUKUS relies on Australia, Japan, India, and the United States. So the Americans themselves have got a lot of work to do to convince the Indians about the whole Quad arrangement. Now, I know India is not part of the AUKUS arrangement, but still, all these things tie in together, because as we speak, Australia is now having upgraded its military ties and its naval exercises with India. So, you know, Japan, Australia, India, and United States are all very much involved in anything to do with the sea. And China is amazing. It's bullying everyone. It's not, and I think what's often lost in India is China is not just bullying India on the borders of the Himalayas. It's bullying all Asian countries in the sea, the Philippines, Vietnam, even Indonesia, which is miles and miles away. It's still bullying them in their territory across their coast. So these things are incredibly complicated. It's very hard to see how these will go through. And I just hope there are very wise minds working on these behind the scenes, advising the politicians.
Totally, indeed. Thank you, Charles Thompson, for joining us and sharing that insight. Now we move on to our next news. Residents in Pakistan have welcomed the ceasefire agreement between Pakistan and Afghanistan, which followed a week of intense border clashes. They see the agreement as a positive development, hoping that both nations can live together in harmony and stability. Let's listen in.
इससे खुशाइंद बात है क्योंकि हम देख रहे थे कि काफ़ी दिनों से कशीदगी चल रही थी दोनों ममालिक में, पर पाकिस्तान ने अफगानिस्तान को भरपूर जवाब भी दिया है। और कल हमने देखा कि पाकिस्तानी हुकाम और अफगान हुकाम की मुलाकात हुई है कतर में, जिससे सीज़ फायर का ऐलान कर दिया गया है। वज़ीर दिफा ख्वाजा आसिफ भी वहाँ पर मौजूद थे। ये खुशाइंद बात है क्योंकि अफगानिस्तान के जो शहरी पाकिस्तान में मुकीम थे अफगानी बाशिंदे, उनको जो निकालने का सिलसिला है वो भी जारी है। पाकिस्तान में उनकी जानिब से ये भी मुतालबा किया गया कि दहशतगर्दी फिलफौर ख़त्म की जाए। इसको हम एक खुशाइंद बात समझते हैं कि दोनों ममालिक के दरमियान मुआहदा जो है खुश असलूबी से तय पाएगी।
पाकिस्तान और अफ़गानिस्तान के दरमियान जो अमन मुआहदा हुआ है ये अच्छी बात है। देखें, हम पड़ोसी मुसलमान मुल्क हैं और हमें मिलजुल के रहना चाहिए, और इस तरह अगर कशीदगी होगी तो दोनों मुल्कों का नुकसान है। तो हम नहीं चाहते, पाकिस्तान भी नहीं चाहता कि मुस्लिम मुल्क से कशीदगी पैदा करके जो है ना वो हालात ख़राब हो।
Now, the ceasefire agreement was signed after multiple talks and was finalized in Doha with mediation by Qatar and Turkey. Both sides have agreed to establish mechanisms aimed at consolidating peace and stability between the two nations. Sharing a further update on the peace talks, Pakistan's Defense Minister Khwaja Muhammad Asif has said that the ceasefire is finalized and both sides will meet again in Istanbul on October 25th to discuss more detailed matters. The Pakistan Defense Minister has also stressed that the ceasefire should ensure complete stoppage of terrorism from Afghanistan on Pakistani soil. Moreover, the Pakistan too has confirmed the agreement with its spokesperson, emphasizing that both countries will refrain from targeting each other's security forces, civilians, or critical infrastructure moving forward. That's all we have time for. Keep watching NewsX World for more news updates from around the world.